Okay. Okay. Goji is getting on. Good morning, Goji. So we had.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. So we had recently started a new Torah portion, and the Torah portion in content focuses on the service of Yom Kippur as it was done in the temple, which really doesn't resemble what we have in synagogues around the world on Yom Kippur. We no longer have a temple, tabernacle. We're no longer doing the offerings or any of the offerings, and we do read this as part of the service. At the end of the morning service, or it's already in the afternoon usually, of Yom Kippur. That's after Yizkor, so that's a smaller crowd, but this is read as part of it. Now, we had started, we'd read verse 4, and we had gotten a bit into the Hasidic insights, but I think I'll start again from verse 4, from the Hasidic insights. And actually, I didn't send out a copy of it, but because here we only have verse 5 at the top of the page, I want to send out, but I do want to read verse 4 again, at least part of it, because it'll help frame a little bit of what we're going to be discussing. The Torah says that it tells us that when on this very special day of the year, Yom Kippur, which we have a lot of holidays, and Shabbos is a very special day every week. Yom Kippur is called in the Torah Achas B'Shana, one day a year. It is unique, and it is considered, if there's such a thing we can use, is the holiest day of the year. And on that day of the service, there would be the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. Good morning, Laurie. The high priest would be leading the service, and therefore it's all called the holiest day of the year. And the person who most represents holiness in the nation, the high priest, assuming as an individual, it may be actually the holiest, but certainly that's the office, the highest, the holiest office in the structure of Jewish ritual life. And as part of that service, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, on Yom Kippur would go into the Holy of Holies, where that's really only one day a year that there was a service there. So there was a lot of uniqueness built in and very clear to any onlooker. Yom Kippur say there's something very special about the Yom Kippur service. Now, part of the Yom Kippur service, in verse 4, which we had read already, but I just want to recap it a little bit, and it's not what I sent yesterday. It says there that when the high priest enters the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur, he must not do so robed in his regular regalia of 8 garments. Okay, so and this is going to be relevant to the note we're going to read, the Hasidic insights. Generally, there was a staff of Kohens who were doing holy work on behalf of the community, taking care of the offerings. They were running the show, the people of spiritual stature, presumably, and they all wore a uniform, a Kohen uniform of service, 4 white linen garments. There was a hat, there was a tunic, pants, and there was a sash. The Kohen Gadol had 8 garments. The high priest had 8 garments, and the garments also had, some of the garments had gold in them. It was much more regal. There was a simplicity to the white linen garments of the Kohen, the regular Kohen, and the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, wore very regal garments, and part of that is also because we say, clothes make the man or the woman. There's something to the clothes and the ambiance, and he was the high priest of the nation, and that was part of the presentation as designed by the Torah. Was there these golden 8 garments, some of them golden. It was much more awesome looking. But on Yom Kippur, for at least much of the day, for some special Yom Kippur services, he did it not robed in his irregular regalia of 8 garments, and he did it. Rather, he must wear only 4 garments. I'm only reading the parts that are relevant to us, similar to those of a regular priest, made solely out of linen. He must wear a linen tunic, linen trousers, a linen sash, and a linen turban. These are holy garments, and therefore he has to go to the mikveh before he puts them on. So there is the idea of the linen garments. The 8 garments that the high priest usually wore, the 4 linen garments that he wore for these Yom Kippur services. And what's interesting, just linguistically, which really is part of where the launching point for some of the thoughts in here, even if they don't say it explicitly, is that they keep repeating linen. So again, the verse I read says he must wear a linen tunic, linen trousers. Linen trousers must be upon his flesh. He must gird himself with a linen sash. He must wear a linen turban. The Torah, which is always very concise with language, could have said he should wear a tunic, trousers upon his flesh, a linen sash, and a linen turban. I'm sorry, he should wear a tunic, trousers upon his flesh, a sash, and a turban, all made of linen. You don't have to keep repeating linen, 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 linen. It's 4 times linen here. Okay, so now let's get back into. We already dipped our toes, I guess, into this. It's on page 127. Let's see. We'll take hopefully we'll get through the whole note today. You must wear only 4 garments. The 8 garments. It's note number 4 on 127 all the way to the left. The 8 garments wore year-round by the high priest atoned for the entire Jewish people with regard to 8 specific aberrations of attitude or behavior. Okay, so the all year is wearing 8 garments. What are the 8 garments? The Kohen Gadol, the high priest, represented the people. And even as Judaism believes that you and I, each of us, have a direct connection and relationship with God, and we can turn to God, and God listens to us, there is very much in the Jewish structure where we have God gave us the gift of leadership who helps us along, encourage, inspire, even in the spiritual realm of things, helps us and facilitates, whether we know or not, facilitates our growth and our ability and guiding blessings to us and so on. That's what we have. We have a tremendous respect for spiritual leadership, not because they're our intermediary with God. We don't need an intermediary with God, but they are facilitators for God, helping us out. Could we do it without them? Yes. Are we grateful for their help? Absolutely. And the high priest, the 8 garments symbolized the high priest's efforts, ability to help soften the effects of some negative behaviors amongst the people. So we say they're addressed to 8 specific aberrations of attitude or behavior. Number 1, the headgear. The regular priest's hats and the high priest's turban, they both wore headgear, but they weren't identical. The regular priest had something more simple, just the regular hat. And the high priest had a turban that wound around. It was much more, it was higher and it was more regal looking. So that atones for haughtiness, because it was something that looked imposing and intimidating, even perhaps, or inspiring. That the headgear represents that loftiness, and atones for loftiness, misguided loftiness, which is haughtiness, as indicated by the fact that it adds height to the priest wearing it. Number 2, the sash atones for sinful thought, is therefore tied just under the heart. That sash is like a belt. We wear one. Many people, certainly in the Hasidic community, we wear one every time we pray. It's the same type of thing. We tend to wear it around our waists. But the times at the temple with the high priest, clearly it was more like on the stomach, under the heart. Therefore, tied just under the heart. The tunic atones for murders, which were a witness before which the murderer cannot be tried. So the high priest has a problem on his hands is because in the real world, you can't, an earthly court can't address every crime, because an earthly court can only assess crimes through earthly means, human means, and many things we're not going to be able to figure out, and you don't want to guess, and you'd rather allow, what do they say, 99 guilty people go free than execute one innocent person. So, and that's a necessary thing. So what happens to murderers who witnessed, which are witnessed, for which the murderer cannot be tried? And we've spoken about it. Even if people saw a murder, it's not necessarily, someone could have murdered someone on Fifth Avenue and people watching. It is not necessarily, in most cases, it would not be a capital case where they could actually be executed. So what do you do with someone who has such wanton and brazen disregard for human life? In case he was not properly warned before. Witnessed and warned murder is atoned for by the execution of the murder. Unwitnessed murder is atoned for by the right of the decapitated calf, which we have not spoken about, which we'll describe later. But now, so what does the high priest do? Someone has had a person. There are murders for which there has been no atonement through punishment. Part of the spiritual work of the high priest was to atone for that, to work with that, and also to work with those murderers. This sin is atoned for by the brothers by the tunic, because the tunic recalls how Joseph's brothers sought to kill him on account of his tunic and used his bloodstained tunic to deceive Jacob into believing he had been killed. So there's a certain association to the tunic and murder on murder that is not properly punished or atoned for. Because there was the story of Joseph being sold into slavery by his brothers, where he wasn't murdered, but they believe he was murdered, and they showed their father Jacob a tunic dipped into goat's blood, so that he should think that he had died. The tunic brings that up, and the tunic represents that, where the high priest was addressing that dysfunction within the people. For the trousers, the purpose of which is to cover the reproductive organ, those atone for carnal sins. Number 5, the breastplate. The Kohen Gadol, the high priest, wore a breastplate. The regular Kohen did not. That atones for miscarriage of justice. That was something that was on them. It was a way through the breastplate. There was God would speak to the high priest, to the people sometimes, or speak a message. Give guidance through the breastplate. It was a way they made judgments. In other words, that their assessment, if they wanted to know how they should respond to a situation, should they go to war, they would ask. There was a way of asking God, and God would respond through lighting up letters on the breastplate. So it helped guide their judgment. So the breastplate atones for miscarriage of justice, because that is the idea is therefore called the breastplate of judgment. And it means for judges who did not think properly. 6, the ephod atones for idolatry. The ephod was like almost like an apron that the breastplate is attached to. 7, the robe atones for public slander. Since when the priest wearing it walks, the bells and pomegranates attached to it make an audible sound. The high priest had a walk with it, as I said, it was a tunic, a robe, and then on top of that was a robe, and at the bottom of the robe there were bells, and so everyone knew he was coming. And there are reasons for that, but part of that was also part of the majesty of it, and that idea is it makes an audible sound, and that atones for public slander, like the idea of what we would call just making noise. In contrast, the incense, which is offered up inside the sanctuary without witnesses, atones for private slander. 4, the forehead plate atones for brazenness. since a person's forehead crumples when he assumes a headstrong attitude of insolence. I'm not sure what they mean by crumples here. There is a language in the Torah. I mean, even in Israel today, if you use it, there's a term azut metzach. Azut metzach means brazen, defiant. It means having chutzpah, if you know that. Azut metzach literally means a strong forehead, which I would always took to understand that it means that I don't know what crumples means, but crumples would mean that I think that to me it would mean that a person is totally unfazed, which means that the forehead doesn't crumple, that they have a chutzpah and they're not impressed even by are moved by the idea that they're having such audacity or the response to that audacity. So I'm not sure why they're called crumples. I don't know where that comes from. Of these, the 4 basic priestly garments, both those worn by regular priests year-round and those worn by the high priest on Yom Kippur allude to the basic array of the soul's faculties. Okay. So 4 basic priestly garments. They, aside from what we just said, that the garments are seen as avenues through which the high priest would be able to ameliorate or address the psycho-spiritual dysfunctions of the people. They really also relate to how we all function, because in order to deal with dysfunctions, we wanted to work out the proper functioning. And the proper functioning, if just to think about it in the way we've discussed in different ways numerous times, there's an idea in the divine we call Sefirot, divine building blocks, 10 energies of creation, reflected in our souls, which are we say a range of human faculties, psychological, soul, intellectual, emotional faculties, action faculties. So if you think about it this way, we all have a subconscious, and the subconscious drives and the subconscious urges and the pulls of the subconscious, and that does guide us. And if a thought falls into our minds, it's not coming from nowhere. It's coming from there's something we want, or there's something that we're responding to, or something that we want. So there's this subconscious, which is deep within, and it's very raw and very central to who we are. And then, if you use that model, something my subconscious peeks into my conscious, and now I have an idea, and I cogitate on it, I develop it, and now I feel something. The idea came that I need to go and reach out for that cousin I really haven't spoken to in 3 months, and I want to feel that I'm connected to my family. I want to feel like I'm being the best me. And this morning I had this idea. I'm just pulling that idea out of nowhere, maybe my subconscious, so the idea comes from a deep need that I wasn't thinking about, that I knew of. And now it comes to my mind, I think about it, and I start to feel, the guy or her, they're lonely. I want to go do something. I want to let them know that I care. So that in and of itself may make me feel like, oh my gosh, I'm thinking my cousin still doesn't know anything until I do something. So then there's getting over the hump of not wanting to do something, actually doing it. So I go through a range of my subconscious coming to my conscious and thinking about it, going to my emotions, and my emotions hopefully being strong enough to spur action, and not only the emotions, but emotions is the engine which gets me across to actually get it done. If I really want to do it, I'll do it. If not, I'll probably get distracted. And there are a lot of things we want to do that we don't end up doing. So let's look at what they're saying are these 4 levels of priestly garments. Number 1, the headgear alludes to the presence of keter. Keter means a crown, and that is the language for this highest like pre-conscious level within the person. So that would be like subconscious, or my faith, my deepest drives, what really what gives me my deepest pleasure, not like a hot dog pleasure, but makes me feel, truly resonates, that makes me feel like that life is meaningful, and it's my deepest drives. And that's within the divine, we call that. That's the beginning of God unpacking the 10 sephirot, 10 divine energies. Above that all is what we call Keter, the crown. So the headgear alludes to the presence of Keter, super rational light and will, in Chochmah, insight. That's what peeks into your from your subconscious into your conscious, your deeper will, your deeper what you really want out of life. That's like I said. This morning I thought about my cousin, who I haven't spoken to in quite a while. It was deep inside. I want to feel we have a relationship. I want to honor that relationship, and maybe deep inside, I wasn't thinking about it until just now. But I don't want to neglect that. So novel insight drawn from the super-rational faculties of the soul is possible only when we are ready to abandon preconceptions and assume an attitude of non-self-awareness. So creativity comes from there too, and because it comes from it's coming from the subconscious and obviously from the conscious too. But you're thinking of an idea, and something hits you, it comes out of somewhere. And it's not from the ether, it's from your subconscious. So here, what it's saying is that the idea of surrendering, not needing to control everything, but being open to other ideas is an important part of creativity. People have very good ideas in the shower. I'm not sure why, but I would speculate that they're relaxed. And they're not sitting at a desk tackling an idea. If they're relaxed and they surrender, and an idea can hit them, or maybe when they're laying in bed going to sleep, because or just taking a walk, because when we're wound tight and we're very focused, and we're going to say conscious of self, what we're trying to accomplish, then we're very limited. We're controlling our consciousness, and by definition also that means we're controlling it, keeping in a certain lane, and it can't go into other more creative lanes. So the headgear being the antidote to haughtiness, that's what prepares us for new revelations of Chachma. So the headgear, and we're talking about in the Kohen here, but that's in all of us, represents this idea. Again, it makes you taller, especially in the high priest. It gave a majesty, a sense of majesty. It smacks one would think of haughtiness, and was meant as an antidote to our haughtiness. The next step down would be in the processing of having an idea, opening ourselves up to our own faith, to what really matters to us, to our subconscious, and that peeking through into our conscious. Then there's what we call bina, which means developing it. You have a spark of an idea, you can ignore it. Or say, I haven't spoken to that person in a long time, or whatever the thought is. And then you say, I just can't handle it now, I'm busy, and you move on. I mean, I'm sure it happens many times every day to people all over the world. Bina, the Hebrew word bina, means the comprehension, means we grab it and we develop it. We start to own it, we flesh it out. When we flesh it out, then it starts to trigger. It may start to trigger. If it means something to us, it'll start triggering actually palpable emotions. So the next step is the sash, which alludes to bina. I'm saying, they say understanding. I think you could call it like comprehension, a rational intellect through which the transcendental insight of Chochmah is processed and made part of our way of thinking. Only after which it can make us as new, more refined individuals. Again, if you have an idea, you are an inspiring lecture, and you feel inspired, and you walk down and say, that was a great lecture, let's have lunch, it probably will not have that much impact on your behaviors in life 3 days from now. If you walk out of there and say, what does this mean? Let me digest one time, unpack it and own it. And it matters, and you see a way forward, and you feel the engine of your emotions want to push you, take you forward. That becomes transformative. So it can make us as new, more refined individuals. It is therefore used to tie the garments to the body, alluding to the notion of bringing external transcendent consciousness into ourselves. Okay, so this is quite a packed piece over here. I don't want to just run over things. So I don't know if we'll finish today or not, but in the makeup of the human being, and this is very much developed in Jewish spirituality, there's what we feel. There's our functional psyche, how we understand, how we relate, how we appreciate, how we feel, how we act. There are things that are not so clearly appreciable for us to, so to speak, get our arms around inside of us. There can be the subconscious, there's faith, there's a moral values where it doesn't smell, something doesn't smell right. I can't explain, but it doesn't smell right. Or if this resonates, and even if I can't explain it, but there's something in me that knows this is right or knows this is wrong. It's more of, relatively speaking, a little bit more abstract, less have your teeth into that you can sit down and write an essay explaining it. So languages, we have some things which are what we call immanent, I-M-M-A-N-E-N-T, which means that they're in us and we can fully appreciate it. I know when I'm afraid of something, I know when I love something, I can feel it. And then there's some things that are a little more, we'll call amorphous, but it says more like surrounding. In other words, it's not totally digested, but it's a little bit outside of me, beyond my immediate grasp. Then there's something which has a similarity to it. There are things that are not inside me, things I do. How I think, how I understand, how I feel, that's inside me. Putting up a mezuzah, knocking into nails, that's not inside of me. That's taking a hand and just doing it. And on the face of it, it's a relatively shallow thing to do. Me thinking about mezuzah, thinking about oneness, thinking about monotheism, thinking about the idea that I have God told me to give this reminder, a mnemonic, every time I walk into a room and think about the oneness of what goes on in the room should be wrapped up in the oneness of the divine and the oneness of humanity. That's all beautiful stuff. That's in my mind. And it inspires me in my heart, but then knocking the nails is relatively shallow. On the other hand, we learn a lot by doing, we feel by doing, and doing is amazingly sometimes a real trigger for starting to feel. I see it in my life. If someone says, I'm not going to do this mitzvah until I fully understand and feel for it, I can understand them saying that. And they may get there, they may not get there. Sometimes they say, a person will say, okay, I get it, I don't fully get it, but I'm going to try it anyway. And through doing it, they feel they got it. Now, it doesn't mean they can explain it, but it means something to them. It's actualized. And I've mentioned before, many years ago, 30 years ago, I was studying with someone here, a very bright mathematician who moved out long ago. But I remember he asked me as I was sitting in his office, he said, can you please describe to me what Shabbat is? And before I could say something, because I have the attitude that I was ready to unload on him, he said, I understand, I accept that I will not fully understand and appreciate it until I practice it. But give me whatever you can to be like a thumbnail. And I explained it to him. But I remember driving home thinking, because I sticky noted that comment, like, he's not going to understand the practices. And I thought about it. I thought that was a very insightful comment and a very true comment, which 26, I didn't, it struck me. It took me aback, and I had to think it through. Because sometimes actions are openness to understanding and feeling, but it comes from the outside in, not from the inside out. So it's the things that seem more extraneous to us are beyond our internal world. They actually impact our internal world. So the sash, it takes our garments, which are extraneous to us, but it draws them closer. Let's look what this is. Therefore, used to tie the garments to the body, alluding to the notion of bringing external transcendent consciousness into ourselves. So I'm talking about transcendent consciousness. I'm talking about even the consciousness associated with action. Its location next to the heart alludes how understanding and integrating new insight is meant to remake the whole person, just as the heart pumps blood throughout the entire body. The sash, therefore, atones for the misuse of intellect by sinful thinking. So the sash addresses that idea that we put our mind in the wrong place, and therefore it drags our emotions into the wrong place, and it kind of muddies the waters. And the sash helps us, it points our direction to be able to rectify that. The tunic alludes to the emotions, not just what we're cogitating on, what we're developing in our minds, and which brings us to emotions, but the emotions themselves. And that corresponds to the torso and its limbs, which the tunic covers. In Kabbalistic writings, we say that chesed, which means love, attraction, kindness, corresponds to the right arm. Gevura, which literally means might or severity, but it also means the ability to push back against the weight of inertia or habits, and that corresponds to the left arm. Tiferet, which means beauty and harmony, but that means really being able to balance where you need to express that sense of connectedness and love, and where you need to stand back in the respect, and not give into even your good instincts. You want to, there's a loved one who needs space right now. You need gevura. There means give them space, respect their journey. So tiferet is this third one, which really means keeping your eye on the ball and not getting wrapped up in your emotions. That I'm a hugger, I'm a connector, or I tend to be more of private and quiet. Those are all understandable things, but then you see what the situation requires, and you pull from your toolbox and do the right thing that what the situation is calling for, not what it makes you feel comfortable. The next one is called Netzach, which means victory or perseverance, corresponds to the right leg. That means to persevere to actually get something done. Because as I think we all know, sometimes we have good intentions and good feelings, but it just doesn't actually translate into action. And Netzach is the idea of being able to push over the goal line for that. Hod means splendor, acknowledgement, corresponds to the left leg, which is really Hod. It literally means splendor, acknowledgement. It can be part of a word, hoda, which could mean acknowledgement. Acknowledgement means humility. It means I'm acknowledging. You said something, I'm acknowledging. Or a God exists, or I'm acknowledging something that doesn't come naturally to me. It means I'm surrendering a position. And that is part of getting things done also, is just surrendering to the need of the moment and not getting wrapped up about things that how I feel and what I want that are really impeding the action that's necessary. And then finally, Yesod, which literally means foundation, can mean loyalty. I don't know. And here it means if you want to do it in the figure of the human, it corresponds to the procreative organ. It means it's connection. When you're about to speak to someone, you want to have your thoughts properly placed so that it's not just you dumping on someone, but it's with an objective and with an understanding that there are ears attached to a different body here, and you want to be able to say it in a way that's acceptable, that gets the job done. You want to have the proper emotional platform. because if a person's not emotionally available, there's no reason to say anything because you're not going to get anywhere. And then, but then you saw this even a zero, when you talk about the person, connect person to person, and they should feel connect. That's one of the reasons it's very good to look in someone's eyes when you're speaking, because the feel that I'm not just speaking at you, I'm speaking to you. We just entered a relationship. It's called conversation. So that corresponds to the procreative organ. The test of whether an intellectual insight, chokhmah, has been properly processed, bina, is if it refines our emotions, helping us subjugate our innate animal nature to our higher human nature. Metaphorically, then, murder alludes to the slaying of our human self by our animal self, which results when the intellect does not affect the emotions. If you remember, earlier on this, we said that the tunic refers to the it alluded in the high priest, it alluded to murders that were unaddressed because they weren't properly witnessed or warned, whatever. So here in spiritual thinking, you say there's a metaphorically, there's an idea of there's language. They're really doing a great job trying to unpack this, but it's a lot of different things. There's a language in the Torah. The first time the Torah talks about a prohibition against murder, which is all the way in the beginning of the Torah. Well, before there was a Torah, we talk about the times of Adam and Eve. It says a person who what is forbidden is to spill the blood of a person within a person. So it's kind of spill the blood of a person. Spill the blood of a person within a person is kind of odd language. That's why the Talmud says talk about abortion. So it's there's a person within a person. But what does this mean spiritually? So we have two selves. There's our higher visionary self, and then there's our more functional animal self, which is trying to feed our specific needs. And if we're going after our appetites, it's an instinctive self, and it can get us into trouble if we allow just our instincts to run the show. So here, murder alludes to the slaying of our human self by our animal self. Human here, self, they mean over here the higher visionary self, and animal self means just following our instincts and our appetites. Which results when the intellect does not affect the emotions. If we don't bring intellect to our emotions and we allow our emotions to run the show, that's when we will act emotionally when someone says something not nice to us. And instead of thinking about how rationally, how best, what we want to get out of the situation, how best to bring it there, we'll lash out. I mean, all of these things, the things that we don't like about ourselves are going to be often, it's going to be those allowing our emotional selves to act without the proper reining in and guidance and discipline of our higher intellectual selves and our better judgment. Number 4. Yeah.
Just going back to Yesod, where you're speaking to someone and you have your thoughts properly placed, look at your person's eyes. How do you get to that spot? Like, is it that surrender that allows you to have the thoughts properly placed? I don't know if you're following. Like,
tell me if I'm following. I think because I think I think I follow you. I think it's a very good question. If I have something to say, let's say if I'm I have people working. Someone did not do things the way I think it has to be done, and I have to have a conversation with them. Inside, I might be upset. If I'm feeling that, it's probably not the best time for me to say something, because that's going to really color what I say and how it comes out. And it's probably going to work against the effectiveness, because people don't like being spoken down to. People don't like being berated, and their defenses go up. And I got to think, what's my objective here? Is my objective to make the person feel bad because they did something? Okay, then lash out. If my objective is to to actually get the job done better next time, or to be able to explain to them. So, in a way that they can hear. What I want to be able to do is, feel my emotion, understand it, and then put it to the side, because that's not going to be helpful right here. Because in this case it's a negative emotion, and think, where do I want to go, and what's the objective? And that would be more, I guess, like the Tiferet idea is I want to balance the criticism with some positive, with a way forward, with a solution. However, that's a management thing. But then, as I'm going to, the person's walking in for the meeting. So now the thing is, it's not about me dumping on them. We're two human beings, and I want to connect with them, and I want them to be able to hear me. And I want to be heard, and I want to be able to hear them. And that kind of, I think it is a surrender. It's saying, I have all very valid approaches and ideas and everything, and they're in my mind, because I want to get somewhere. But I also have to realize that it's two people here. I'm not talking to a potato. I'm talking to a human being, and I need also to surrender to the moment that one of us is not more human than the next, and if I'm a supervisor and they're a supervisee, that's in the structure, and it's important. It doesn't make me more of a human than they are, and I need to be open to hearing them. They need to feel that I'm open to hearing them. They need to feel that I'm open to feeling about how they're feeling, how they're taking this. So it is, I think, a certain surrender to the experience of the two people connecting.
Thank you so much.
So, number 4, the trousers, unlike the tunic, do not extend down the full length of the body. They extend only from the waist to the thighs, for they are worn in order to modestly cover the procreative organ. They therefore allude to the proper relationship with our feminine side, malchut, so that the trousers take care of our bottom half, our powers of expression, thought, speech, and action, by which we aim to control and influence reality in accordance with a fully processed new insight. So this may be somewhat counterintuitively, when you take the range of divine building blocks, and we start off with Keter, this crown, right? And that's the deepest subconscious. The last stop on the train, which is action, it's like when the actual words coming out of your mouth, that's called malchut. I mean, that's called royalty. Well, royalty and crown go together. So crown is the beginning of it all, but it really comes into actuality into when you're doing it. So from a Torah perspective, understanding and thinking about ourselves and the world and our relationships, all of that in an internal world is incomplete. And that's not really what you want. And that doesn't really touch the crown, so to speak, until you're impacting. We all want to be useful in the world outside of us. We know that we're making a mark when we're in the world outside of us, and reaching outside of us is where everything all of a sudden matters. So the malchut, which we call royalty, it's taking all this process and making it happen. If I'm sitting in my office, to use the example I was talking before about, and I'm thinking about the best way to approach, and I'm thinking about how to have the best impact with this employee and in the company, and I don't actually have them in the meeting, then what was it worth? I went through an internal exercise. I'm not saying it's worthless, but the point was to have an impact. So impact, presence in the world, impact in the world, is called malchut, and that happens to be seen as a feminine. All of this is masculine, feminine. I guess you could call it yin and yang. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but the impact in the world, that's a feminine thing, because the idea of being aware of what the situation needs and how to impact the situation and nuances in the situation, that seems to be that, and that I think many. In many couples, you see that, including close to home here, that the one most aware and sensitive and picking up nuances on what's going on in the room and certain situations is going to be the one with more of that feminine talent, and that's called malchut. So that's what they're bringing here. That's the feminine side. They therefore allude to the proper relationship with our feminine side. Malchut, kingdom, are powers of expression, thought, speech, and action by which we aim to control and influence reality in accordance with that fully processed in inside. This relationship is characterized by modesty, meaning humility, in assessing our ability to influence reality, lest overconfidence lead us to attempt to rectify aspects of reality we're not going to rectify. But that also needs humility, because if we say, "Wow, God gave me, I'm the doer, I'm the disruptor, I'm able to impact reality," don't take yourself all that seriously. You do have that talent, but go slow and make sure that you're properly assessing and that you're not overstepping. As we have already noted in several contexts, this presumptuousness can backfire, causing us to succumb to the enticements of materiality rather than elevate the material world as we intended. Carnal sin is the epitome of such misuse of our creative powers. The trousers, therefore, atone for this type of sin. So the trousers, the lower part, they're actually covering your legs, are get you from place to place. It's this thing of impact. This concept of impact, this idea is something that represents the we'll call malchut, the royalty, this feminine, and it atones for misapplication. These four garments, as the verse continues, are holy garments. I read it before, they're called holy garments, meaning that the entire array of our soul's faculties must be holy, meaning oriented toward God and harnessed in the service of our ongoing divine mission, transforming the world into God's home by propagating and disseminating divine consciousness, which, as noted, depends upon our willingness and ability to negate our sense of self. So holiness means that we recognize bringing holiness into my life means recognizing that it's not all about me. It's my meal, no one else is in the room. It's whatever is going on. I live in God's world, and I want to live my life in a way where that God created it to be. That makes it holy. My Cheerios, my breakfast can be holy too, if I'm open to it being as part of my divine mission. The garments must also be made solely out of linen. We noted before how, and I mentioned before, because it says linen, it keeps noting it. How, in contrast to other cultivated crops, the flax plant yields one stalk per seed, and this alludes to the simple intrinsic oneness of God. In the present context, the requirement that the Yom Kippur priestly garments be made out of linen indicates that our simple faith in God's oneness, meaning because there's one seed per plant, so there's a oneness idea. Like Yom Kippur is a unique and a holy day, and the high priest is unique. There's a oneness, and going into that one room, that there was a one exercise of the year. So the oneness that all reflects God's oneness. Our simple faith in God's oneness, meaning how He is in exclusive control of our reality, must permeate all the faculties of our souls. This ensures that the creative process, beginning with insight and proceeding to intellect, emotions, and expression, will develop properly and be fulfilled optimally. Although all of us possess the full array of soul faculties alluded to by the four priestly garments, these garments also allude to four types of people. So now we've gone to in each of us, the different garments and the different functions, but in a different way, you say they allude to four different types of people, each of which chiefly maintains one of these soul faculties. The headgear, which is, as I said, keter, which is the subconscious, and chokhmah, which is the beginning of consciousness and inspiration, alludes to creative and inventive types. The sash alludes to intellectual and analytical types. It's, again, below the heart, we said that it's the beginning, it's when we unpack and really digest it and flesh out an idea, which leads to lead to us feeling something. The tunic emotions means when they know emotions actually get on fire, alludes to emotional types. And the trousers, malchut, allude to industrious types whose chief interest lies in palpable accomplishment, driving the world to its ultimate rectification. That's the idea of that kingship idea is getting stuff done. Just making sure that things are working. All four types of people must learn to inform their pursuits with faith in God. Clearly, clearly the sophistication of our faith in God, page 128, on the right, will vary in accordance with their innate propensities and gifts. This is alluded to by the fact that the adjective linen in this verse is repeated for each of the four garments instead of being mentioned once in connection with them all together. Nonetheless, just as the high priest cannot perform the Yom Kippur rites unless he is wearing all four garments, the collective body of the Jewish people requires all four types of people to manifest their faith in God, each according to their innate propensities. We all come in from different directions because we have different personalities. One could be more emotional, one could be more rational. Only then are we assured of full collective atonement and reinstatement with God. Similarly, each of us manifests one or another of these four personality types at various times in our lives. The lesson here is that we must learn how to bring God's presence into our lives in whatever phase of life we are in. No matter where we are, we always has to be holy. And there are going to be different elements. Right now, we're in action mode. Right now, maybe in intellectual mode, but or maybe that's just my personality in general. Each one of us has the ability and the responsibility to be able to bring holiness to that. Though the actual Yom Kippur rites can only be performed by one individual in one place once a year, the lesson is meant, of course, to be universally and constantly relevant. Repentance is possible at any time in all situations and always leads us both to our own personal redemptions and further toward the world's collective redemption. We'll leave that over there. And we'll continue on 128, God willing, next week.
Thank you. Could I ask one question about the incense? Any other further thoughts about the incense? I think I missed that point, what the true meaning was about that, because I know the high priest used that to potentially help heal people as well.
The incense? Yes, you're right. It was in 2 weeks ago in the Torah portion. We're going to get more into it here in the Torah portion. And if they don't, we'll address it. But it should be coming up in the Chassidic Insights. I just haven't looked ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Great day.
This is great. Thank you.
Thank you.